G'day listeners and welcome to another episode of the Scouting Australia podcast, powered by Australian Property Scout Buyers Agency. I'm your host, Sammy Gordon, and today, guys, we've got an interesting episode to unpack. Firstly, we have to unpack the haircut directly on my left with big Mr. Jimmy Ibrahim, mate. Welcome back to the show. How are you, buddy?
G'day, Sammy. G'day, listeners. Good to be back up here.
It's good to have you back, mate. It's good to have you back. Mate, the sunshine's been good too, mate. It's been pretty good.
It has been pretty good, Sammy. It never disappoints up here, other than sometimes the conversations with you. But the weather has been incredible.
Disappoints every single time. The styling, the cut, the colour, everything. It's just disappointing.
So it's always good to be back up here. And very excited about our guest for today. So I'll let you do the intro.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we'll jump straight into it. So obviously who we have in the studio is Mr. Big Brendan Geoghegan. Mate, welcome you to the show, buddy. How are you?
Yeah, really well. Thank you, boys. Happy to be on. Looking forward to the banter throughout today. It's going to be good fun.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure having you on. You and I have known each other for quite a while now, mate, yourself through the investing space and different sort of core space and different things like that as well. And, man, obviously you're a client of APS now as well. But, man, the reason I wanted to kind of get you on and have a good chat with you today about kind of what you've done is like that's kind of where you've made your income or earned your crust, right, from that side of things. Yep. But I know you've been an avid developer over the years as well, man. So I kind of just wanted to like unpack a few things with you, man. I mean, the title, a lot of people clicked on this, like developing with seasoned block splitter. They might have been wondering if we're talking about Jakey's head, the big brick head, the big block head. We are not talking about cracking open Jakey's head, even though there would be some gold in there, I'm sure. We're talking about developing and block splitting subdivisions and all the rest of it, mate. Why don't you walk us through, man? Give us a bit of a background on yourself, mate, so the listeners can understand who you are and where you come from.
Yeah, 100%. So, mate, started out pretty young as an apprentice chippy carpenter and went to night school, did my builder's course. So it's kind of all I knew. It's where I've been for a very long time in that space. My wife and I, we've been together since we were pretty young. So got together when we were 18, purchased our first property when we were 19, renovated it, lived in it as a PPOR for a while.
Did you buy your first one at 19?
Yeah.
Bro, I got to shake your hand. You're the only dude I've ever met that's ever bought one at the same age as me, like pre-20. So Jimmy was like fucking 800. So.
Yeah. I don't know what I was doing when I was 19.
Well done, mate. That's awesome. I didn't even know that. I didn't know I was 19. Didn't mean to cut you off.
Well done.
That's so good. It's
in Newcastle, mind you, wasn't it? Was it in Newcastle?
Pretty close to Newcastle, out near Port Stephens. So, jumped in early.
Beautiful, mate.
What a great place of the world. Yeah, Jeepers.
Very nice, beautiful part of the world. Not as nice
Jeepers.
as...
I'm going to fucking write that one down. I don't even know what it means. Jeepers. I need to look it up.
Haven't heard that one before. But
well, there you go. You can take that with you.
We're in already. But not as nice as Kingscliff, which we've recently moved to. But it's a good spot.
Sweet, man. So you bought the first place at 19.
Yep.
You guys renovated that and moved into that. And then, mate, talk us through a bit of the journey of where you've been. Mate, now we know this isn't like an investor episode with you, right? Like obviously, mate, Discovery Core Consultant with APS now. You work with a lot of clients. You work with us as well within your own portfolio, even prior to coming and working with Australian Property Scout. But man, and obviously School of Property as well. You head up the education department over there at School of Property as well. So, man, talking us through, everything around that and what you've done, man, what I want to do and dissect today is it's not even really to do much with your journey, even though I'd love to dive into a few of those things, but more around like the developing and what you've done as well. So, man, even talk us through like from when you bought that first one, you renovated it with the missus, and then to when you kind of got to when you did your first development and kind of what got you into the first development, what started pushing through from there as well. We'll save the whole journey for another day.
Yeah, it's a long journey. It would take a massive episode to get
we
through
don't have that long with Jimmy, so like, mate, we don't know if you make it to the end.
Yeah, it is night time, so I get it. So if we fast forward, was in the building game. Actually had a pretty good opportunity. We moved from Newcastle up to the Gold Coast, and I started working in a bit of an education role and a sales role with a property developer. So also in between that, when I was on the tools as well, I was leading hand on a 250 duplex site, which was a massive development as well. So I was kind of always exposed to development, always seeing these guys rolling up in nice cars on holidays, like seeing this lifestyle of the developer's lifestyle, and always thought, well, I'm going to like invest a little bit, cash out, and I'm going to get some cash, and I'm going to jump in and start doing some subdivisions essentially. So
that's where you thought the big bucks were, because you saw these guys roll up in their swanky cars and the birds hanging off the arm and holidaying all the time, and you thought that's where the money was.
Jet skis on the back. Yeah. That's where I thought the money was.
Yeah.
So
because that's the way it was portrayed, right?
That's exactly how it was portrayed, and that's what I thought. But I never really kind of got into it to make massive mega bucks. Like I just thought, well, if I can get in, do some subdivisions, when we're having kids, we can spend time with them. We don't have to go to work and not spend time with our kids. So it was always for the future of like, let's build this nest egg, let's make some good cash, replace the incomes that we're on. I don't have to be on the tools forever. Get in, subdivide some blocks. So if we fast forward to 2020 now, about 4 years ago, we started to subdivide some blocks. So the first one that we did, 1 into 3 subdivision, existing property remained, 2 back blocks. What we did at the time, it was COVID. Original plans were to put some duplexes on those sites.
Yep.
But with COVID, building, everything like that, we decided to just package them up as land and duplex, and we sold them as blocks of land.
Okay. Oh, so you didn't actually even develop them; you just sold them as a block, and then let people kind of do the build themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got them approved for duplexes. But
why did you decide not to build them?
Just because at that time in
Profit
COVID,
wasn't in there.
Yeah, just the timeline to get a builder there as well. Like it was at least 12 months, and it was just made sense at that time. We had another development that we had our eyes on, or another property to develop.
Yep.
Get rid of that one, move on to the next deal.
Yep.
Was this in Kingscliff or in
It's Newey.
These ones are in Newcastle.
Okay, got it.
So,
what did you do between when you bought the first one at 19 until then? Like investing wise, did you buy anything during that period?
Yeah. So what we were doing is we just kind of held that original PPOR as an investment. Then we rented for a while, built another property. We flipped that, made some profit there, but just kind of like a build here and there.
Okay.
Not too much in between that.
Okay, sweet.
as an owner builder? Because obviously you've got your. Did you build them yourself? Or?
No, I didn't actually.
Okay.
So had a mate. I did help. I did a lot of the work, but had a mate as well. He's the one that got me into building in the first place. He built it for me. We did a little bit here and there on the weekends. So yeah.
Okay, so when you did that first deal and you were looking at the development, your numbers that you were projecting beforehand, what were you expecting to make out of that? Do you remember?
Yeah, we got it pretty close, to be honest. We were looking at we had forecasted about 350K from that one. We ended up making 360K, so we're only 10K off on the feasibility.
Yeah,
so
wow.
yeah, we got pretty close to that one.
And what time frame were we looking at?
So that one there got held up. So there was a few issues in council with civil works. There was major plumbing because we had to stretch the civils over 30 metres, which then gets upgraded. There's more reports, deeper trenches, bigger pipes, etc. So that one dragged out to about 16 to 18 months because we got held up a little bit with COVID as well. So yeah, about an 18-month, maybe a little bit more on that one. So a little bit longer than what we thought, to be honest.
And when you look at that, I mean, as a return, I mean, that's a pretty good result. I mean, when you're thinking 16, 18 months, considering you didn't actually have to build anything, it was more just paperwork and processes and all that sort of stuff. So what would you say about that, Sammy? Would you be happy with that?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I don't think it's a bad deal. And I think one of the things that we, like, obviously they're pretty good numbers, right? But I think one of the things that Brendo wanted to dive into too is you weren't actually doing this by yourself, right? Like you were partnering with someone else and JVing, and you kind of had the multiple ventures on the go. So that was half, right? So you effectively on the back end kind of netted half on that side of things. What I want to know is like, just what's curious to me is I know you don't want to make the big bucks, right? And this is where I'm trying to link these two things of like, you've seen the guys that make the big money doing the devs. Yep. I'm just curious. Was the game plan to start with the small things and then go bigger, or just to keep chopping the smaller things and keep rolling that out if that worked?
It was keep chopping the smaller ones.
Yep.
But then doing more every single year. So maybe doing 3-4 deals of the smaller ones.
Okay. So then you start talking, if you're doing, let's say 360 every 18 months, we annualize, let's say 250 grand per deal sort of thing every 12 sort of thing. And so you're hoping to roll 3-4 of them a year. So you're talking 750, $1 million. That was the game plan.
That was the game plan.
So what brought it short? Like you obviously, you had another one on the go. So you flipped those ones and then you had the other deal on the go as well.
Yep.
So what made you, in terms of that other deal as well, run us through the numbers on that, how that played out. Was that similar time frame?
Similar time frame, yeah. So about 18 months later, after we did the first one, rolled into the next one. So this was a really simple deal, but with the massive increase that we had around COVID time, we got the heavy uplift of equity in the property plus the development as well. So that one there, simple 1 into 2 subdivision. This one we actually, we did a small reno. I think we spent about 20K on the existing property, put a tenant in there, subdivided and built a brand new 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom home on the other side.
Yeah.
So we ended up, we've just sold that recently, late last year.
Yeah.
That one there, that made about 700K to 750K.
Okay.
So that was...
In what sort of turnaround?
That one there was a little bit shorter. So I think that was around sort of 12 to 16 months.
Okay.
Yeah, wow. Can I ask you, just taking one step back?
Yeah.
It sounds like you had a decent amount of equity in your primary place of residence in the first place, right?
Yep.
So why did you do a JV first of all?
Yeah, so it wasn't we didn't get a massive uplift on that first property. So the very first property that we purchased in 2009, we probably only made about 100K on that one.
Got it.
The next one that we did, that one there, we actually held that whilst we were developing. So it had about 300K equity in it, but we didn't really use that. So we were using our own cash, and that first development, all costs in, like, was about 180 grand. So it was 90K each.
Okay.
My mate was the builder in Newcastle, so he was able to do a lot of the work on the ground for me whilst I lived in Kingscliff.
Okay, so it wasn't just a financial thing, it was because he was on the ground as well. So it was a bit of a joint force of sweat equity and also capital.
100%.
Okay. In hindsight, if you could have done it, could you have done it yourself?
Probably could have, yeah.
Can I ask something with this? Right, with the first one, right, we're talking 360K in let's say 18-month window. How much? What time frame was that? Like, how much of that do you reckon there was growth, and how much of it do you reckon was actual profit from dev?
A lot of it was growth, to be honest. So
what were you projecting?
When we were projecting that FISO, we probably were projecting about 400 to 450
Profit,
yeah.
and you made 360. Or are you talking about the second one?
Sorry, second one.
What about the first one?
First one, no, the first one didn't really have any uplift.
Okay,
that was
growth-wise.
just all development.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, if that was the projections without growth, like, that's pretty decent on that time frame. And I think this is, man, like, and people are probably wondering, okay, where are we going with this? Because, like, Sammy's not pro developing, right? What was it? What year did you do that deal?
So that was about 2020.
2020. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, because, like,
Start.
man, this is where when people sort of ask me stuff, and we're going to come full circle around to this. I'm wondering if I should go into it now or I should leave it for the end. But I used to develop before 2020 as well. So last dev I acquired the site in 2019, right? And it was once we hit like 2020 and we started going to once we got past COVID, the big ramp and the grants came out and the build prices went crazy. That's where, like, devs got killed because it was so hard to actually project how to make that, like, what money you were going to make out of these deals, and especially when the pricing went crazy and then everything was getting held up because everything was so slow, and then the build, like, actual house prices going crazy, everything getting held up. So, like, timeline and holding costs blowing out, but then also build time frames going crazy, and build prices going crazy as well, right? So
sure.
like, I think, and you know what, we're going to come full circle around to this as well. But what I want to ask you, and really, like, the big thing around this as well, is you said to me, because those two figures, man, any other devs in that time frame before I jump into this?
No.
Okay, so, like, man, you made 360 on 18 months on one deal. You made 700, and that's had a huge, that was, 300 grand's worth of growth took you to 700 plus profit on that one, which you've split with old mate as well. But that's say on those deals that you could have done yourself. But then you've said to me multiple times, and that's why I kind of want to get you on this, because I actually want to kind of pick your brain on this sort of thing in this setting rather than just like eat it up, is you said to me, fuck, I look at what Naaman did and I look at what Aaron and Joe did on their potties, and, like, I look at what I did, and, like, what I did was decent, but I was out of the market for so long, and I was developing and actively going and doing all the stuff and had all the headache of this and that and the build and the council approval process and all the rest of it. Why do you look at the boys' stuff when you made good money out of this thing in this sort of time frame of a couple of deals? Yeah, why? Like, that's what I'm curious about. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. Well, look, since I've met you and had a look at the actual strategy behind what you do, like, I was focusing on one strategy, one type of property, not multiple. Like, you need bread and butters and then offsetting them with cash flow. And then, like, kind of what I'm doing is something that's at the back end of the portfolio is a debt reduction deal.
Yep.
So having a look at what Naaman has done in that time and how many properties he's got, like, he's got 10 properties now. We weren't getting holdings, we were getting cash.
Yeah.
So it was looking at, okay, there is a better way to do this without all the work that I did. They were literally just coming to you, getting good properties in good locations and making more money.
Still seeing the results.
Yeah, still seeing the results.
Yep.
So it was kind of like, well, that was a light bulb moment for me. All I knew was development. Like, the properties that I was buying, because I wasn't researching correctly, I hadn't met a good team behind me, I wasn't getting the uplift from the buy and hold. So I always thought, I have to go out there and I have to manufacture this growth. I have to build, or I have to renovate, or I have to develop.
Yep.
There is a better way.
Yeah, 100%.
Especially because you're very knowledgeable in that space.
Yep.
So do you find, and Sammy, I'm curious at your thoughts, because when we do the discovery calls, and Brendan, I'll be curious with you, when you get chippies or tradies on there, they're almost to their own detriment because they're quite skillful in a specific trade. They want to do a lot of the work themselves, and they don't quite get the concept of buying in the right market and making the right decision will do 80% of the heavy lifting.
Yep.
I'm curious, was that the issue with you? You just thought, well, I'm going to have to do it, as you said before. But that is a very common thing I find with tradies.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a tradie on today, and he's done pretty well, but he has always gone there, renovated, or done major work to the property to be able to get that equity to get the next property. Whereas giving him examples of Naaman and the guys and some of the clients that we're working with, where they've just literally, the property's in a different state to them, it's just doing all the heavy lifting for them. They're not having to be on the tools engineering it. Yeah, it's a light bulb moment for them as well.
One of the concepts, Sammy, you love and that velocity of money. And when you're talking to me about this and we're looking at the time frame of 18 months and you obviously got some great results, but there is no better example of velocity of money, of leverage and compounding when you're out of the game for a certain period of time. Whereas you look at Naaman, if he's doing 3 or 4 deals within that time and the velocity of his capital and really stretching it out, I mean, is that from your side, Sam? Is that velocity of money in its truest form?
Yeah, 100%, man. Like you always got to look at opportunity cost, right? And obviously, like the result that you've gotten out of the deal is definitely decent. You know what I mean? Like it's definitely strong from that side of things. But I think the other thing we have to look at is the fact that we also have to halve the profit. Yep. So if you're making 700 grand, you're actually making 350, right? And like Naaman, out of the first deal he did, out of one deal, would be up 350 grand out of the first deal he would have done with us.
Exactly.
But then he's multiplied that, and that's where, like, obviously I know where you're going. I know where the thought pattern is. And then obviously he did about 4 in the first year, right? So all of those have done between probably like 250 to 350 grand in a 3-year window. And then all the ones he's kind of picked up another years behind, they're not that far behind it in terms of growth perspective. And this is one of my biggest things with developing too early. And it's something that Brendo said before as well. It's like, their debt reduction plays, you know what I mean? Their cash profits, their chunk deals. And I think the biggest issue is it takes you out of the market for the longest. So if I look at the most money I've ever made in property, you know, let's kind of almost like capitalize it for years of how many I've bought, growth rates, right? We'll just look at the growth rates from that side of thing. There's years where I've done the same thing as what you did. Was like I bought a block and then I develop on it and then you might flick it or whatever, and different benefits around doing that sort of thing, you know, for living it for a few years or whatever. But like you can do those sorts of strategies. But the downtime in terms of that kind of, a lot of the time, that generally 18-month window, like that 12 to 18-month window of it actually being the anchor that holds you back from being able to go, okay, well, maybe I could have bought another 3 or 4 properties or more in that time frame. All right, Matt, I made $150,000, $200,000 on a deal, but it kept me out of the market of being able to do these other deals, which if I'd bought 4 of them and they'd all done 20, 30% worth of growth, I probably would have made double the amount with a lot less outlay at work into it sort of thing, and just strategically building this out as well. And I think this is where it comes in of like, man, like you can see the value in terms of what he's done. And realistically, you probably, like you said, you could have done this yourself. And I think the cool thing is like, as you get further down the line and the portfolio builds, you easily could, like, if you're on the back end of an acquisition journey, or you're finishing some grannies or whatever, and you're finishing building out that part of the portfolio, and you rinse these into the portfolio on the back end, you started doing, let's say you're doing one of those every 18 months, that is netting 700. Remembering though that the 700 came from the actual growth that came through the market as well. You know, but even saying the 400 in its 18-month window, if you're rinsing that on the back end as debt reduction plays, not in the portfolio where you're actually also doing yourself out of doing other deals, I think that's the transition. You know what I mean? Like, they're the differences where I can see it having the value in doing it, and I can say that from having developed myself, having the chats with Brendo about this too. And I think, yeah, man, that's the shift of like, the value is there and you can make good money out of them, but it's just got to make sense of when to do it. And this is so often where we get like young kids coming through, or people they just want to get enough money until they can do their first dev. And then the first dev, almost always you lose money, or maybe you don't lose money. You don't make anywhere near as much on your first dev typically as you think you will. You know, and then that might set them back, and also you miss 12, 18, 24 months in the market. Yeah, man, the biggest bits of money I've ever lost are the times that I took the year or 2 years that I took off trying to develop, and all right, I made 200 grand on a deal, but how much of my other properties did they make in that same time frame too? So it's an interesting concept, man, and I think something that just like, people need to like analyze it properly and realize that there's a place for it in the portfolio. And when you understand where that place is and you properly fit it in, and if you're in School of Property, you have a very good understanding of where we see development deals and where they make a lot of sense. And yeah, man, I think it's just cool to kind of, I don't know about you, Jimmy. We haven't dealt with that many people coming through that have made good money out of developments. You have a few coming through, but you have most of them that come through and they actually have no idea and they're about to pull the trigger on a dev and they're tossing up, do we work with APS? Or do we try and find a BA/work with APS? Or do we do this dev? And I've run FISOs for clients before. They're going to lose money on the dev because they haven't run the numbers properly. They could sell the property and actually make more from just selling the asset than developing it because bottom end of the market, wrong product, wrong market, sales prices come back, build prices gone up. There's actually no money in the deal. They could make 200 grand selling it or lose 200 grand developing it.
100%.
But they don't run those FISOs, right?
No, that's right. And I learned that from working with a developer for a long time. So that's how I got good at my numbers. Like I would never have gone out there and developed if I hadn't learned all of that previously. But what a lot of people...
Because how long were you in that space for before you pulled the trigger on your first deal?
I was in that space for about 3 years. Okay. But then I also was a leading hand on a massive development as well, where I come across numbers and I had the building background. Yep. So felt like I had the confidence to go into that at that time. But what a lot of people underestimate as well, not only the time that you're sitting out of the market, going through the development application process, it's so hard to find those types of deals as well, especially now. Like now, I was looking until I
engaged us,
engaged you guys, and I couldn't find a deal to stack anymore. And that's running off my numbers, knowing my numbers back to front.
What was the closest you got? And you had relationships in Newey, right?
And I had relationships.
What was the closest you got, percentage-wise?
Man, there was a deal that we were looking at, and it was a 1 into 4.
Okay.
And it was the closest, and it was still nowhere near what I wanted.
I
don't remember exactly what.
What's your benchmark? What do you mean? 20?
The developer that I worked for, he wouldn't work anything under 30.
Yeah, right.
30% profit on cost. But yeah, I would sort of go around that 20%, but nothing sort of around 22%. I didn't want to go below that.
I know heaps of people that will run it like 8 to 10%. I would not get anywhere near a dev that was 8 to 10%. Yeah, for me, it's always been 20, 25
Are they
plus.
people that are doing them themselves and doing a lot of the work themselves, Semi? They're not overseeing it. They're like doing
No, man,
the
they're
actual...
outsourcing. They're outsourcing.
Still outsourcing.
Yeah, they're acquiring someone else's building. They're managing the process and like that. Yeah, they're taking the 8 to 10%. Like that's their profit margin on it. But man, far out. I would not. The risk on that thing, man. Like you have no buffer. You know what I mean? Like it's too close to being able to break even. You have two things go wrong, bang, you're struggling to break even on it.
I heard about, like on a disco call for us here at APS, I was speaking with a guy that's come on board to get some bread and butters, and he was talking about a guy that he knows that's in Melbourne. A guy was doing a development and it had a pretty healthy profit margin, but obviously everything that's gone on now, 3% is what he's looking at now, and the development's not done yet. So 3%, I'm like...
And Melbourne's still sliding.
Yeah, and...
Fuck.
Yeah,
so it started out...
pre-sell?
Not looking good.
Did he pre-sell or no? Oh. So if the market comes back a couple of percent, he's probably in the red.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at how much risk exposure that is from when he started to completion and the fluctuations in that, and you're looking at what we do and the strategy that you adopt, Sammy. We're looking to mitigate risk before we even buy the property. I mean, you're looking to control the numbers so closely before you've even signed a contract, let alone go unconditional, which I think is when people talk about risk. I mean, surely there isn't as much risk. I mean, doing a development, not knowing your numbers, that they may change in 12 to 18 months. I mean, that must give you a bit of sleepless nights.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't know your numbers and you can't predict what's going to happen.
I think the biggest issue now as well is it's like the building environment is so unpredictable. You know, like we get to this point where we think it's going to come, we're coming into an equilibrium and everything's like loosening off and getting better. And then you hear that like 2,500 builders went into insolvency last financial year. You know what I mean? And like we haven't got enough trades to keep the pricing down and to keep everything level out. So it's like the longer these deals drag out, like there's a reason builders and developers are going under. It's because like they had these projects, they can't complete them. So they've got to fold. You know what I mean? They literally have to fold because they cannot complete these contracts. And this is one of the biggest things, man, is like, and let me know what your thoughts are on this, Brendo, but like, man, I think like developing is for a flat market. You know what I mean? Or like if we think a market's going to turn and potentially have some good growth, but the building industry is calm and everything's calm from that side. Because Bob Anderson? You know Bobby. Yep. Yeah. So Bobby, I remember Bobby always said to me, he always said, I did his course like 10 years ago, you know what I mean, back when I first did a few things. And he always said to me, he hates hot markets, hate like shitty. I'd love a dead market because I know what I can acquire a site for, what I can build it for, what everything's going to cost me, what I can sell it for. Even if, yes, all right, if it booms, that's amazing. But then when it booms, all right, I might make a bit more, but then the next deal is going to be harder to find. It's going to be harder to source. It's going to be harder to get a builder for. It's going to be harder to pull everything together. He said, and this dude's been a developer for like 40, 50 years. And he always said to me, I always just want to develop in a flat market. I hate anything but a flat market. And that's why it is so hard to get all those other things to stand up, to stack up, you know, and it's where these things happen where like, all right, a market might be running and maybe the value's going up, but what else is happening across the board? Debt, build price cost, build costs, all that sort of thing. And there's just so many fluctuations that you're very, very exposed to. And that's why, man, like when a market is, and when a lot of Australia's in like a flat period, you know what I mean? Like, I even look between like when Brizzy and like when Sydney had its last boom in 2000, 2003, and then it flatlined from 2003 to 2013. In that time period, Perth, Brizzy, Adelaide, we've all spoken this story before, in 2004 to 2007, it doubled, right? But then in that period there wasn't really that many locations that were going through significant growth between about 2008, 2009, post-GFC, through to around about 2013 when Sydney had bottomed out and it started its next run and Melbourne started in 2014. That 4 to 5 year window there, and that's where old mate that used to work for, that's where he made a lot of his money at the time where he was developing a lot. Yep. The market was dead, and that would have been the time to develop. Like if there's time to develop, they're the sort of times, pick up sites, acquire, especially if you're early in a cycle or before a market's going to run, but everything's flat and then potentially you get a bit of uplift with it. If the uplift comes through, bonus, cherry on top. If it doesn't, whatever, ran the numbers, worked at those numbers, happy days, move forward. And I think this is one of the things, man, is like, people get hung up with the idea. You actually said it to me when you first came and started working with me. You wanted to develop. I remember, like, you're like, oh, I want to get to this point of develop, or can we go find development sites or whatever? Because you think that's where the holy grail is.
Yeah, 100%.
But the time comes when it makes sense. But so often, well-placed, well-leveraged bread and butters where you're stripping equity, like that ROI it's unbeatable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's unbeatable because of that rate of return that keeps multiplying the more you, even if you're just stripping the deposit back out, going to the next, stripping the deposit, going to the next, you can't beat that. And if a dev gets held up and blows out to 18, 24 months or whatever, which sounds like the first one did a bit, like this is where it's like, it's not a simple clear-cut journey through the development process. Whereas with the bread and butter routes, if you can forecast, especially correct locations at the right time, that's where it's, man, they shut the gates.
Would you say, Sammy, knowing what you've just said and the strategy that's worked for you, that you would never necessarily develop in the future if you've seen what a bread and butter can do? Why would you, as a debt reduction, like why would you put yourself under that unless the return is going to be that bloody good?
So if there was that lull period where like I thought nowhere was affordable and it made enough sense to me that it was going to grow, and I don't see anywhere like that on the horizon anytime soon.
You mean it wasn't make sense to do a bread and butter deal, right?
Yeah. So let's say that nowhere made sense at the time to do a bread and butter deal. And it's going to be very interesting to watch where this cycle that we're currently in right now peaks out at, right? So when that peaks out, it's going to be very interesting to watch. Have most markets reach a very heady point in the time frame, and if it has, you might leave it for a year to kind of let things cool off a bit and see where it sort of lands. And then that probably would be a decent time to then pick, okay, what's the next market we think is probably going to do a bit of damage? Can we run some physios here and see if they work? Like, would you be looking at the same thing, Breno? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm definitely not looking anymore. It's just, it's sitting out of the market way too long.
Yeah.
To find a deal, then by the time it goes through, and there's a lot of cash tied up, like that last one that we did, there was like 300K because that was construction in there. So there was 300K tied in that deal for over 12, 16 months. Whereas that's a couple of bread and butters that would have grown and probably done more than what I would have done in that development. So I think it comes back to surrounding yourself with people that have done what you want to do. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've found with you guys, the team here, is didn't know what I didn't know. Well, I kind of knew, but it was just like, I know development better, so I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Is your mate that you did the JVs with keen to do another deal based on those numbers?
Yeah, man. Like he's looking now.
He's hitting you up?
He sends me deals and he's like, this one might work. And we always, we're sending deals to each other, but
run the numbers and they're just not stacking.
They're just not stacking.
Yeah.
You just can't find them. It's funny, like we see in the same location now that we did some people going in and paying way over for a site that they're going to subdivide, and we see the subdivision going through, and I look at the numbers of what they paid for that, and I know what the council contributions are, I know all the costs, and I'm like, they're not making any money. Like, this must be a buy and hold development strategy for them to like have a rental out of it or something. I'm like, how do they make money?
Then what's the point, man?
I don't know.
Like, what's the point of it? It just doesn't make sense.
So it's like that competition in the market, because it's a hot market as well. I'm not going to go in and pay overs for deals. That's for sure.
Yeah, man. Yeah, not just for the sake. I'm not going to sit there and for 18 months develop a deal to then break even of it. You've got enough experience yet, and you go through that.
No, exactly.
It is funny about the mentality about developing though. And I know when we spoke early days, because my brother-in-law did some townhouse developments and anyone that sort of makes money in property in the area you're in, that's all they do. So for a lot of people, that's all they ever know is the only way to do it. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
And unless you extend your education, do you get exposed like you, Brendan, to this? And you're like, hold on, so what's going on here? And you're a smart dude, right? Yep. So you figure it out because you've seen someone else do it. And now you're like, this is a no-brainer. Yeah, let's pivot and change strategy. So that's the biggest thing for me. And I always laugh because I've said this on other podcasts. I'm very average at a lot of things. But anything got to do with tools and trades and all that sort of stuff, it's just not my wheelhouse. Yet when I look at my portfolio, I've built 4 granny flats, done 2 major renos, and done all this.
So you're a developer,
and I haven't done anything.
He's a developer.
I actually didn't do any of the work, which is the best kind of development that I like.
But then, man, how much are you made out of them as well?
Man,
it has
crazy.
that compounding effect.
But then that's purely down to just engaging the right people, right? So that's quite funny. Anything else from your side, Brendan, from your journey or anything? I think we've pretty much hit a lot of the stuff on the head.
I think we've hit a lot of it on the head. I think it's, just being exposed to the right people, the right team, that have been there and done what you've done before, like the proof's in the pudding with what Sammy's done. And that's how I was connected to APS, is like, hang on, I'm out there doing all this work. I'm putting all this money into developments. I'm taking risks here. Seeing a guy with 50 plus properties and starting out on like 60 to 80K, having 20, 30 properties, you go, man, what's this guy doing differently to I am? You get exposed to a good strategy and like, okay, that makes sense. That's what I want to do. I'll pivot. I'll do that now. Put what I've made from developments into those buy and holds, the bread and butters, cash flows.
I think what I really like is the fact that, like, because Brendan and I chatted for ages, and I knew he had his devs going on. I knew he was looking for other sites and everything. And I never, I'm not a pressure. I was like, if someone wants to work with me, they want to work. But I don't care if someone doesn't. I got no stress. And I think it was like when we would just have chats about things, and he just like he had that money sitting there, burning a hole in his pocket, and he's like, this isn't performing for me, and I can't find a site. And I've been looking for a year to find a site, and I can't find a site. And it's like, even if that was your wheelhouse for a while, and we've got a few clients on the books that are the same thing, and they've kind of come through and they're like, we just can't make anything stack anymore. So even if we go and park this in for the next 2-3, and these are like professional developers, these guys that I know that do it for a living down in Sydney, and they've come back through to me, they've come to me and just gone, man, like we can't do anything for that. Like nothing's stacking, and it doesn't look like anything's going to stack for a while. We don't want this just to burn a hole in our pocket doing nothing. So we want to put it into the market to do these things that we know work with you, and then whether we sell them down the track or whatever we do, we'll get back into the developing when the numbers make sense again. But I think that's what I like. It's kind of like you said before, man, like pivoting into that. It's like seeing, just the fact that it's going to be dead money, no ROI on it. Velocity of money stagnant. If anything, it's going backwards, because if it's not performing for you, it literally is going backwards, because it could be somewhere doing a lot more. So, man, I think that's what I really like and take away from it. And it's also, it's not as if you haven't done it because you haven't done well. You've done well. Proof's in the pudding of the results that you've had as well, man. You've had experience, you've brought it in, you've succeeded, you've executed, you've done really well at it. But you've realized there's better avenues, especially in this current market. And man, times will come where like they'll stack up again, and maybe the 25s plus will come back to the fore when things calm back down and it makes more sense. And people aren't as bullish and all the rest of it, and they'll come back. But man, I think having the foresight, but then also the clarity of just being able to pivot, makes sense, pull the trigger. If I can get into a market that does 20% and I make 100, 150 grand off one property, and then what if I leverage that into 2, 3, 4, and you start doing 600 a year in capital growth passively, multiply that, do it again next year, what does that turn into? And man, that's what excites me, man. I love that. I love that you've sort of changed that outlook and that mentality from that side.
100%.
Mate, any final key takeaways, learnings you throw at us?
Mate,
what about for anyone that was tossing it up? They were tossing it up and they go, but I really like to look at that 0% net return development site over buying a good solid bread and butter. What would you say?
Yeah, 100%. It's exactly why I wanted to jump on here today, to kind of like share my story so that other tradies, other builders, people that are kind of have my background, where it's like all they know is I'm on the tools, I need to get out there, I need to put that sweat equity in, I need to do renos, flip, make money. There is a better way. Find a team, educate yourself, connect, and work on different strategies. Even if you are still doing a renovation here or there, but you've still got capital to put into the bread and butters, paying down the cash flows. Like proof's in the pudding, right? Like naming 10 properties. Like a lot of our clients have property portfolios like that, and they're literally doing their job, going home, spending time with their kids, and it's doing the work in the background. So let the market do the heavy lifting.
10 property portfolio, average income earner, started with an average deposit and started 3 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's some pretty wild shit, man.
Yep. So if you're thinking, I would say if you're thinking about going out there and buying a reno or doing a development, have a chat to the team. For sure.
Yeah, 100%, man. You know what even plays in my mind there? Like if you've got younger kids that are tradies and they want to make money and the rest of it, like, all right, you got to weigh up the opportunity cost of taking the time off work to go and do a reno versus outsourcing it or just buying something that's good, clean bread and butter or whatever. But like there's the opportunity. I know that's where I used to put in my sweat equity for my own stuff. And if there's young tradies with literally those sorts of skill sets as well, doesn't mean you can't outsource the buying position to make sure you're in. Remember, we always say 80-90% of the heavy lifting will be from the location and the property asset type that you buy there. Yep. But then if you're not that sure on that, but then you've got the ability to execute on a reno, okay, maybe you get placed into deals 2, 3, 4 times a year. And then how does that compound? Like $500,000-$600,000 a year in capital growth every time. But you might force an extra 10% on through your renovation as well. And man, I think this is where it's like, tweaking it specifically to the individual. But if you're purely dev and you're like, you just got your crews because you've been doing it forever and that's the way to do it, mate, there 100% is the better way. The leverage is those correct growth markets and the correct team to get you there.
Absolutely. And like not underestimating the negotiation on the way in as well. Like you sent me a screenshot the other day where a client made 87K in like 3 months. A lot of that was the negotiation on the way in with the heavy lifting as well. Yep. So it's like in a development, 87K, not doing that in 3 months. Like so some of the people that I'm hearing of, they're not doing that period in Melbourne. So I would say there's definitely better ways for sure. Yeah, beautiful. All right, boys. Anything else? Good?
Nah, well done, Brendan.
I like that. That was nice, awesome. Short, sharp,
punchy.
jumpy. Mate, great results on what you've done so far, by the way, man. And once again, hats off to you for being willing to pivot and mate, give something else a crack, which we've already seen some pretty sick results in. So, mate, I just can't wait to see you keep building out. But, mate, I'm looking forward to getting you back in. I believe the date has been set for you to come in for a myth-busting episode as well. So, mate, I'm looking forward to getting you in on that and unpacking some myths out there too, man. So, mate, thank you once again for tuning in and Jimmy yourself for flying up from the dirty south as well.
Thank you very much, Sammy. Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks boys.
Listeners.
Exciting times ahead.
Boys, absolute pleasure having you both on. Listeners, I hope you took some great value from that episode. If you did, make sure you send it on to someone else that also might take some great value. Potentially you got someone that's looking for the development sites. They can't make something stack or they've developed their entire lives and maybe they need to have a look at something from a new lens and a new perspective. So if you do know anyone else out there like that or maybe someone's wanted to develop forever, make sure you send this episode on to give them a bit of clarity and help them out. We want to keep building this community of people that are thinking, talking, and acting the way that we do about property investing. Now, guys, if you haven't left us a 5-star review yet, we would massively appreciate if you jump on there, you leave us a 5-star review. We do take massive notice and we really, really appreciate it. If you haven't hit the follow or the subscribe button yet on your favorite listening platform, make sure you jump on there and you hit the button so you're getting updated twice weekly with the episodes as they come out. But until next week, guys, that's a wrap for another Scouting Australia podcast.